Shuckalugga kapow! How's it going, old schoolers? You are kicking it old school with Russell J.S., and I am your host, Russell J.S. Tonight we got this time on Russell J.S., it's another album versus album, track by track. I'm taking two great albums from the band Blue Oyster Cult, and I'm pinning them, they're classics too, and I'm pinning them against one another. We've got 1976's Agents of Fortune. Hold on, let me turn the light on here so you can see. Agents of Fortune versus Spectres from 1977. Now, what is it about these two great albums? Well, see, Blue Oyster Cult didn't really have, they've had they had signed a record deal. Their debut album dropped their self-titled debut album dropped in 1972. I mean, they had a few singles, not really big hits, like, say, Cities on Flame with Rock and Roll, then came The Last Days of May, and then the second album came out called Tyranny and Mutation, which contained such, I like to call classics as The Red and the Black, and also, I think, Seven Screaming Dizbusters, and in Something in the Hills. It's been a long while since I've really gotten into these. Lips in the Hills, yeah, there we go. And, the third one in 1974, which is considered an ultimate cult classic called Secret Treaties, which contains my favorite classics, Astronomy, and, Flaming Telepaths, Harvester of Eyes, which, by the way, the Secret Treaties album has been a major influences on such great bands that we know today, such as Metallica, who did in fact cover their song Astronomy on their Garage Inc. album from 1998, but still didn't really make real noise just yet. And then they did put out a live album called On Your Feet or On Your Knees, because at the time, back in the 70s, if you really your music was always based on your stage show. I mean, after all, on New Year's Eve in 1973, they did get outstaged by Kiss at the New York Academy of Music when Kiss opened for them. And, well, On Your Feet or On Your Knees did sell well, and their concert attendance was great because they had lasers and everything, and three-man guitar attacks, which became their trademark. Their frontman, Eric Bloom, not only did he play guitar, but he played keyboards, and they had their keyboardist, the late, great Alan Lanier, who would play rhythm guitar, sometimes lead, and also as a keysman. And their lead guitarist and also second frontman, Donald Buckdharma Roser, oh man, I mean, one of the greatest guitar players of hard rock, who sadly is not really right up there in the ranks of, say, Jimmy Page and Ritchie Blackmore and Tony Iommi, which that's where he belongs, in my opinion. But then by 1976, Blue Oyster Cult had come out with the Agents of Fortune record, which contained their first ever #1 hit single, Don't Fear the Reaper. And by this time, they were riding high. That's when, the venues got bigger, and then they went in the studio once again to record 1977 Secret Treaties, which contained another big hit single, Godzilla, and other singles such as I Love the Night and Are You Ready to Rock. But tonight, I mean, pretty much, and they're still going strong. BOC still goes strong after all these years. They're right up there ranking with Aerosmith, the Rolling Stones. The bands are still out there that have been around for 50 or more years. And they're still going strong even to this day. Their slogan is On Tour Forever. But before we get into these bad Oscars, I'm going to do a personalized commercial. Are you a fan? If you are a fan of the Blues Brothers movie, the Blues Brothers sketch on Saturday Night Live, the Blues Brothers albums, or you're just downright a fan of John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, lately I've been reading a book about the whole thing. This is a book by Daniel Device. It is called The Blues Brothers, An Epic Friendship, The Rise of an Improv, The Making of an American Film Classic. And I've been reading this book so far. I'm on chapter 5. And if you are a big fan of the Blues Brothers or Saturday Night Live, those early years, or just downright John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, this is the book for you. Now, I've been reading this. If you ever read the book Wired by Bob Woodward, it almost reads exactly like that book, except it's like, what if the manuscript of Wired was stolen from somebody close to the Belushi family, like colleagues or friends or family members? They read the manuscript, didn't approve of what Bob Woodward put, because, that book was very controversial when it came out. Bob Woodward, he put in a bunch of lies, a lot of BS about Belushi, made him look like a drug-fueled monster than the kind-hearted, down-to-earth person who's struggling with a problem that ultimately got him in the end was. But, Judy Belushi even, gave praise this book. Judy Belushi, God rest her soul. And also, a lot of people did. And this is the book for you. It's called The Blues Brothers by Daniel Device. Check it out when you get a chance. And without further ado, if I go ahead and get my notebook ready, we're going to rate these two bad Oscars of albums. So without further ado, let's see how these bad Oscars rank, shall we? All right, let me get to the page where we're at, where these two albums are going to compete. Okay, let's see. Blue Oyster Cult Agents of Fortune versus Blue Oyster Cult Spectres. All right, This Ain't the Summer of Love versus Godzilla. I gotta say, I really do like Godzilla, but I love This Ain't the Summer of Love more. So I'm going to give Agents of Fortune a point for that. True Confessions versus The Golden Age of Leather. Yeah, I don't like... Golden Age of Leather is cool, but I do not like True Confessions, so therefore, Golden Age of Leather takes the win for that one. Oh boy, here we go right here. This is going to be a doozy. Don't Fear the Reaper versus Death Valley Nights. What can I say? I love them both, so I got to give them both a point. ETI versus Searching for Celine. ETI, I love that science fiction vibe that they got for that song. The synth with the guitars and everything. But, I also love Searching for Celine way better. It's got a good hook to it, everything. The Revenge of Vera Gemini versus Fireworks. I have to go with Revenge of Vera Gemini, should I say. Let's see. Sinful Love versus Are You Ready to Rock? Hands down, I'm going with Sinful Love. Tattoo Vampire versus the Celestial the Queen. Celestial the Queen, I like it. It's okay, but I'm going with Tattoo Vampire on this one. Morning Final versus Going Through the Motions. Yeah, I got to go with Morning Final on this one. Tenderloin versus I Love the Night. I love them both. They both got good hooks, they got good rhythm, they got good sound, so they each get a point right there. Okay, last but not least, Debbie Denise versus Nosferatu. I'm not a big fan of that song, Debbie Denise, so Nosferatu gets the point. And now the final score, we got Agents of Fortune versus Agents of Fortune with 8, inspectors with 5. So that means Agents of Fortune takes the win. And let me go ahead and put that right there. Yes, Agents of Fortune definitely wins that one. Now, I got others that I've, also been cooking up. The Kiss self-titled debut album versus Ramones' Road to Ruin. And I also have them on the ready, on the back burner. Cheap Trick at Budokan versus AC/DC. If You Want Blood, You Got It. And let's see, what else? I'm surprised. I haven't looked at the last video that I did. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm going to have a lot of diehard Metallica fans that are going to accuse me of blasphemy for, making Countdown to Extinction by Megadeth the winner over the Black Album. But, there's some others I've also had in the works. Like I got one for Blizzard, Ozzy Osbourne, Blizzard of Oz versus Dio Holy Diver. And I've got ready for, what else is it? Black Sabbath Dehumanizer up against Ozzy Osbourne, No More Tears. But before I really get into those, I'm still feeling the loss of Ozzy at this moment. And I know there's a lot of people that are doing comparisons to Ozzy albums versus, say, Def Leppard or Iron Maiden or Merciful Fate. But you know what? I still have to have more time to really, because I'm still going through that grieving process, because the music of Ozzy Osbourne meant the world to me. And I'm also planning on doing a Battle of the Kiss movies. And what do I mean by that? I'm going to watch, when I get the time, I'm going to watch both Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park and Detroit Rock City back to back and find out which of the two Kiss movies is the better one. In my opinion, I'd say Phantom of the Park, despite the cheesiness, despite everything. I believe that Phantom of the Park might be the better one, but then again, who knows? Detroit Rock City could be the better one. And also, I got another video in the works where I'm going to pick my top 10 favorite movies of the 1990s. I've got that in the works, and I got another album versus album ready to go. I mean, I'm getting a lot of stuff, I'm trying to get as much videos as possible out there, but sometimes I don't have the time to do so because I'm always busy. I've got a hectic work schedule and, things like that. I've got a lot going on in life right now. So, it's like when you become an adult, if I would have been doing this when I was a teenager, had we had YouTube and had we had the internet all the way it is today, like it is today with social media. But, I could have built a following and everything on TikTok and YouTube and all the other stuff, but I just turned 47 years old 2 months ago, and like anybody my age, I gotta work, I gotta pay bills, I got priorities. I got a lot going on in life, like any other adult in the workforce. But any rate, that's the end of this video, and remember, if you're new to the channel, feel free to hit a like, subscribe, leave comments in the box down below, ring that bell for notifications, and remember, keep it real, keep it fresh, keep it chill. Check when you get a chance, no matter how you got to do it, check these two great albums out. I mean, these are even approved by such bands as Metallica and Motley Crue. Check these two out. Whether you buy them on vinyl, CD, or streaming, those fly-by-night streaming services, just go for it. Check those albums out along with other great albums. And, listen to keep kicking it old school. Listen to all that good old school rock of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, even 2010s. Play some ColecoVision, Atari, Nintendo, Intellivision, Odyssey, whatever your desire. Keep watching old school movies, keep watching old school shows, and Godspeed. May the force be with you always, and shuckalacka kapow.